All right, let's dive deep into Russian history. It's a massive subject. We're talking about everything from like the very first settlements all the way to like, today's world and all the complex geopolitics. So mostly using Wikipedia as our source, we'll be looking at sort of like the big picture of Russian history, but also some interesting specifics about the modern Russian Federation. By the end of this deep dive, you should have a pretty good understanding of the major eras and hopefully, come away to some fascinating little details along the way.
Yeah, I think one thing that really grabs your attention is how far back human presence in Russia goes. There's evidence of Homo erectus on the Taman Peninsula. We're talking like 2 million years ago. That's way before lots of other parts of Europe were even inhabited.
2 million years. Wow, that's mind-blowing.
Hmm.
It really changes how you think about like how long this area has been, a place where humans have been living and doing their thing. And it wasn't just like they popped in and out, right? I mean, there were those 1.5 million year old flint tools found in the North Caucasus. Pretty clear that early humans were settling down there.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, those tools show how clever and adaptable they were. And then when you think about the later discoveries, like Denny, that Denisovan-Neanderthal hybrid found in the Altai Mountains, it kind of paints this picture of Russia as like a meeting point for different hominid groups. Tens of thousands of years ago, they were interacting, maybe even interbreeding. Makes you wonder how those encounters shaped like the whole path of human evolution in the region.
It's like going back in time, uncovering these layers. And with each discovery, you realize the past is way more intricate and connected than we ever imagined. So we've got these early humans setting the scene, but then come these new arrivals who really shake things up. I'm talking about the Varangians, those Vikings, sailing all over the waterways of what we now call Russia.
Right. Their arrival in the 9th century was a huge turning point. It's just incredible to imagine that these skilled navigators and warriors heading into these vast unknown lands, their impact on early Russian history is undeniable. And one of the most enduring stories from that time is about Rurik, the Varangian chieftain who, according to the primary chronicle, was asked to rule Novgorod in 862.
Rurik, yeah, it's almost like something out of a legend. This warrior coming from across the sea to rule a Slavic city. And from this almost mythical beginning, you have a dynasty that shapes the political scene for centuries. Oleg, his successor, went on to conquer Kiev just a few decades later, strategically positioned on the Dnieper River. This conquest wasn't just about taking land, it was a show of force. It cemented the Varangian presence and laid the groundwork for what we know as Kiev.
And this rise of Kievan Ruses, it had huge ripple effects. Think about what happened to the Khazar Haganate. They were a powerful force in the region, but in the end, they couldn't withstand the Russia's princes. It just goes to show that the balance of power is always shifting throughout history.
Speaking of power, there are few figures who embody the sheer force of personality and ambition, quite like Ivan the Terrible. He took the rather bold step of crowning himself Tsar in 1547. This wasn't just about a fancy title, was it? It was a declaration that Moscow was the Third Rome, inheriting the legacy of both the Roman and Byzantine empires. What a weighty concept.
Oh, it's a concept that runs deep throughout Russian history, even today. This idea of Moscow as the Third Rome, the protector of Orthodox Christianity, it really solidified this sense of destiny, of Russian exceptionalism, and it justified expansion, bringing the Eastern Slavic lands under Moscow's rule.
And Ivan the Terrible definitely put that idea into action, right? His reign was this whirlwind of legal and military reforms, pushing east into Siberia, south toward the Caspian Sea, and even with some setbacks like the Livonian War, it shows that even terrible rulers aren't unbeatable.
Yeah, his reign is full of contradictions: brutality and piety, expansion and internal conflict. He centralized power, took down the old aristocracy, but also unleashed unbelievable violence during the Oprichnina, a time of state-sponsored terror. It's a period that continues to fascinate and horrify historians. It reveals both the strength and the darkness that would define Russian autocracy.
But Russia's story isn't just about scary rulers and military might. It's also about times of cultural flourishing, like with Catherine the Great. She presided over the Russian Age of Enlightenment, a time when intellectual life was booming and people were engaging with European ideas.
Right, and let's not forget her political skills. Under Catherine, Russia gained huge amounts of territory, including control over the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth and expansion toward the Black Sea. She understood the importance of projecting power, militarily and culturally. Catherine was a patron of the arts and sciences. She corresponded with Enlightenment thinkers like Voltaire and modernized the Russian state.
She even oversaw the exploration and colonization of Alaska, extending Russia's reach across continents.
It's a fascinating period that shows Russia's ambitions on the world stage. Catherine knew that to be a true power, Russia couldn't just be a force in Europe, it had to be global. Her reign really sets the stage for the empire building that would define the 19th century.
But before we get there, we have to talk about the crazy 20th century. It's a period of dramatic upheaval, starting with World War I, which ended centuries of Tsarist rule and plunged Russia into revolution.
World War I was a breaking point for Russia. It exposed the deep social and economic problems that had been brewing for decades. Military defeats, food shortages, economic collapse, it all fueled discontent and ultimately led to the fall of Tsar Nicholas II.
And out of this chaos, you have different forces fighting for power. The provisional government trying to set up a democratic republic, and the Petrograd Soviet representing workers and soldiers.
It was a really volatile time, a power struggle that would decide the fate of Russia. And into this mess stepped the Bolsheviks, a radical socialist party led by the charismatic and ruthless Vladimir Lenin.
Their seizure of power in October 1917, the Bolshevik Revolution. It was a world-changing event. It brought about the creation of the first socialist state, the Soviet Union. It sent shockwaves across the globe.
It was a radical experiment, an attempt to create a whole new society based on Marxist principles. And it came at a huge cost. The Russian Civil War was brutal, pitting the Red Army of the Bolsheviks against all those opposed to communist rule.
The Treaty of Brest-Litovsk got Russia out of World War I, but it forced them to give up a ton of territory. A tough pill to swallow, but it let the Bolsheviks solidify their power and focus on building their new socialist state.
And that process of building the Soviet Union would define the 20th century, a period marked by incredible achievements and unimaginable suffering.
From the horrors of Stalin's reign and the devastation of World War II, to the Cold War rivalry with the West and the triumphs of the space race. The Soviet era is a complicated tapestry. It's woven from threads of idealism, terror, resilience, and innovation. It's a period that deserves its own deep dive. But for now, let's move to the last chapter of our quick tour of Russian history, the post-Soviet era.
By the 1980s, the seemingly unshakable Soviet system was crumbling. Mikhail Gorbachev, the last leader of the Soviet Union, tried to reform the system with glasnost and perestroika.
Glasnost, openness, was about making the government more transparent and accountable. And perestroika, restructuring, was meant to revitalize the stagnant Soviet economy.
These reforms, though well-intentioned, had unforeseen consequences. They unleashed forces Gorbachev couldn't control, leading to unrest, the rise of nationalist movements, and ultimately the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991.
The end of an empire and the start of a new era for Russia. The new Russian Federation faced a mountain of challenges, transitioning to a market economy, rebuilding its political institutions, and figuring out its place in a post-Cold War world.
And from this turbulent period, Vladimir Putin emerges. He would profoundly shape Russia's course in the 21st century.
His rise to power, his assertive foreign policy, his impact on Russian society, these are all things we'll explore more as we delve into modern Russia.
But before we do, I think it's important to just take a moment and reflect on the massive scope of history we've covered. From ancient settlements to imperial grandeur, from revolution to superpower status. Russia's past shows the enduring power of this place and the complexities of human experience.
It reminds us that history isn't just a bunch of dates and facts. It's a story, a narrative that shapes how we see the present and guides our choices for the future. As we move on to explore modern Russia, we'll see how echoes of the past continue to resonate today, shaping its identity, politics, and its place in the world. So we've gone through centuries of Russian history, and now here we are at the start of the 21st century, a time marked by both things staying the same and things changing. Russia, after shedding its Soviet identity, is trying to find its way as the Russian Federation, a country wrestling with its past while trying to assert itself on the world stage.
It's a really fascinating time to look at, It's a time of transition, uncertainty, and new power dynamics emerging. The political scene gets reshaped with a new constitution that establishes a federal, semi-presidential republic, a system that, on paper at least, seems familiar, but in practice, it has its own unique characteristic.
And at the core of this system is the president, a position that holds quite a lot of power, wouldn't you say? It's not just a symbolic role, but a real driving force in shaping both domestic and foreign policy.
Oh, absolutely. The president in the Russian Federation isn't just some figurehead. They appoint the prime minister. They have a lot of control over the military and security, and they play a key role in setting the national agenda. It's a position that's gotten a lot of attention, especially with Vladimir Putin's rise. His leadership and decisions have been, well, debated and analyzed a lot.
Speaking of Putin, his time in office has been marked by a more forceful foreign policy. We can't ignore things like the conflicts with Georgia and Ukraine. Those events really put Russia back in the spotlight globally.
Yeah, those conflicts really highlight how complex Russia's relationship is with its neighbors, especially those that were once part of the Soviet Union. The annexation of Crimea in 2014 and the full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022, I mean, they sent shockwaves through the international community, and they raised questions about what Russia's goals are and how far it's willing to go to achieve them, even using military force.
It's a reminder that geography and history still have a huge influence. But Russia's story isn't just about political maneuvering and military actions. It's also about its economic strength, its vast resources, and how it tries to use those assets on the world stage.
You're absolutely right. I mean, Russia's a big player in global energy. It has the world's second largest reserves of both oil and natural gas. That gives it a lot of leverage, especially when dealing with European countries that depend heavily on Russian energy. This economic power, coupled with its military capabilities, has allowed Russia to reassert itself as a major force in world affairs.
And when we talk about military capabilities, we can't forget that Russia inherited a huge nuclear arsenal from the Soviet Union. It's a stark reminder of the Cold War and how nuclear deterrence still matters in global politics.
No doubt about it. Russia's nuclear arsenal, plus its modernization efforts and new weapons systems, they've kept it at the forefront of global military power. This has definitely shaped how other countries think strategically, and it's contributed to the complex web of security alliances and rivalries we see today.
It's a lot to take in, right? Political transitions, assertive foreign policy, economic power from energy resources, and the weight of being a nuclear superpower. It's almost overwhelming.
Yeah, it is. But in the middle of all this, it's important to remember that Russia also has a rich and vibrant culture. It's a country of artists, writers, musicians, scientists, people who have contributed so much to human civilization. Their stories, their creations, their perspectives, they offer another way to understand this complex and often contradictory nation.
That's a great point. It's easy to get caught up in the geopolitics and forget about the human side of things. So let's shift gears a bit and explore the cultural side of Russia, the aspects that have captured imaginations and inspired creativity for so long. Where do you think we should start?
Well, you can't talk about Russian culture without mentioning literature. Russia has some of the world's most celebrated writers, thinkers who have grappled with the biggest questions of human existence and whose works still resonate with readers today.
Oh, absolutely. Names like Tolstoy, Dostoevsky, Chekhov, they're giants of literature. Their novels and plays explore love, loss, faith, doubt, the human condition in all its complexity. Reading their work is like diving into the Russian soul, seeing the world through a different lens.
And that depth of emotion, that exploration of the human psyche, it's not limited to literature, it flows into music as well. Think of composers like Tchaikovsky. His ballets, Swan Lake, The Nutcracker, are loved all over the world. Or Rachmaninoff with his piano concertos, full of passionate romanticism and melancholic beauty.
And Stravinsky, with his groundbreaking ballet like The Rite of Spring, he revolutionized music. There's such power and intensity in Russian music. It's raw emotion that goes beyond cultural boundaries. It's no surprise that Russian orchestras and musicians are famous worldwide.
And let's not forget about ballet. Russia is almost synonymous with ballet, with companies like the Bolshoi and the Mariinsky setting the standard for generations. The grace, the athleticism, the artistry of Russian ballet dancers is just captivating. It's a testament to years of intense training, a dedication to perfection. That's what has made Russian ballet a global phenomenon.
It's amazing to think about Russia's cultural impact. Literary giants, musical geniuses, incredible ballet dancers. And we can't forget about the visual arts. From icon painting to the avant-garde, Russian artists have pushed boundaries and challenged norms, leaving their mark on art history.
You're right. I mean, we could talk for hours about Repin, Kandinsky, Malevich, Chagall. The list goes on. And beyond the fine arts, we have to recognize Russia's contributions to science and technology. This is the birthplace of Mendeleev, the creator of the periodic table. It's a fundamental concept in chemistry taught all over the world.
And don't forget Konstantin Tsiolkovsky, a visionary pioneer of rocketry and astronautics. His theoretical work laid the foundation for space exploration in the 20th century.
Tsiolkovsky's ideas were way ahead of their time. He imagined humans traveling to space long before it was even possible. His calculations and designs influenced the development of rockets and spacecraft, inspiring generations of scientists and engineers.
And talking about reaching for the stars, we can't overlook Yuri Gagarin, the Soviet cosmonaut who became the first human to orbit the Earth in 1961. It was a monumental achievement, proof of human ingenuity and the power of scientific progress.
Gagarin's flight captured the world's imagination. It symbolized the potential for humanity to overcome what seemed impossible. It marked a new era of space exploration, one where Russia played a central role, a legacy that continues today, with its ongoing contributions to the International Space Station and its ambitious plans for the future of space exploration.
From exploring the depths of the human soul in literature to the heights of space exploration, Russia's cultural contributions are vast and diverse. They give us a glimpse into the heart and mind of this nation, showing a depth of creativity, a resilient spirit, and a constant pursuit of excellence.
Yeah, exploring Russia's culture is like peeling back layers of an onion. There's always something new to discover, something that challenges your assumptions and broadens your understanding of what it means to be human. It's a journey worth taking, one that enriches our appreciation for the diversity of human expression and the power of creativity to go beyond borders and connect us across time and space.
It's incredible how much we've covered, from the political and economic realities of modern Russia to the artistic and scientific accomplishments that have shaped its cultural identity. It reminds us that to understand a nation as complex as Russia, we need to look beyond the headlines. We need to dive into its history, its culture, its people, and their stories. But there's one more thing we need to touch on before we finish our deep dive.
Yeah, you're right. We've talked about Russia's power, its ambitions, its culture. But there's also the issue of human rights. It's something that has caused a lot of controversy and concern, both within Russia and internationally. It's complex and sensitive, but we can't ignore it if we want to present a complete and nuanced picture of modern Russia.
You're absolutely right. So let's take a deep breath and dive into this important, even though sometimes challenging topic. So when we talk about human rights in Russia, it's definitely a conversation that, well, needs to be handled carefully.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's no getting around the fact that Russia has been criticized by international groups like Amnesty International and Freedom House. They point out concerns about restrictions on freedom of speech and assembly, the press too, and also how LGBTQ plus individuals and political dissidents are treated.
And it's not just coming from outside, right? There are people within Russia who are voicing these same concerns. They're pushing for more freedoms and protection.
It's a really complicated situation shaped by history, cultural norms, and of course politics. It's important to avoid making sweeping judgments and to really look at the specifics of each issue to understand the arguments and perspectives from all sides.
I think it's especially interesting how Russia's own history, its experience with authoritarianism and repression, plays a role in the current debates about human rights.
Absolutely. The legacy of the Soviet era, with its limits on individual liberties and suppression of dissent, it still influences how some people view the state's role and the balance between individual freedoms and collective security.
It reminds us that the journey to a more open and democratic society is rarely a straight line. It's a process that requires constant dialogue, debate, and a willingness to face uncomfortable truths.
And it needs people to participate, to hold those in power accountable, and to believe that collective action can bring about positive change.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Russian history, it's clear that we've just scratched the surface. We've traveled from ancient settlements to modern geopolitics, explored cultural achievements, and tackled tough questions about human rights.
It's been quite a journey, hasn't it? I hope what you take away from this isn't just facts and dates, but a deeper understanding of what has shaped Russia, the challenges it faces, and the potential it has.
It's a story that's still unfolding, a story with its ups and downs, its triumphs and tragedies, a story that reminds us that the past is never truly over. It shapes the present and the possibilities for the future.
That's what's so captivating about studying history. It's not just memorizing names and dates. It's about developing critical thinking, cultivating empathy, and gaining a wider perspective on the world.
We hope this deep dive has piqued your interest in Russia. Maybe it'll inspire you to learn more, explore different viewpoints, and engage in thoughtful conversations about this fascinating and often misunderstood country.
Yeah, keep asking questions, keep exploring, keep learning. The world of history, especially of a nation as vast and influential as Russia, it's always full of things to discover.
And that brings us to the end of our journey through Russian history. We hope you enjoy it. Until next time, keep your minds open and your curiosity alive.